throughout these years, one of the most important things that I learned was the motto of Indonesia, which is unity in diversity, right? So in this very multicultural children's home, there were all different races, backgrounds, ideologies, nationalities, and not many of us got along. So we used to fight each other quite often, physically, mentally, emotionally, verbally. Now, what happened was on 2 or 3 occasions, there was a much larger threat that threatened all of us, not just one of us. On each of these occasions, the introvert in me, because I was big time in my introvert then, realized that when these sorts of incidents happened, we would forget our differences. We would forget our ideologies. We would forget that the colors of our skin and the colors of our mindset were different. We would all galvanize. So we would become brothers and we would become sisters in order to fight this one thing that threatened all of us. So once I saw that, I had this one part of an awakening. The second part of this awakening was some years later when I was about 12 years of age, there was a big racist attack that happened with 2 of us, with 16 adults and 2 kids. I was one of these kids. And after this event that happened, I felt upset, I felt humiliated, and all of these things that a young 12-year-old who's got a bit of, learning about the extrovert now has. So in the 3 days that followed, an interesting thing happened. Through the anger, through the fear, through the upset, through the revenge, through the humiliation, I remembered a lesson in history that we had maybe 6 months prior. And this lesson was about the 100 Years' War that was going on in Palestine. It's still going on now. Kid next to me, Miss, 100 Years' War. Yes. Well, it can't be the same people fighting, right, Miss? Now, I missed this completely and just laughed like most of the other kids in the class. On that 3rd day, I realized exactly what they meant, which was, it's not the same people fighting. It's a word, it's a thought, it's a deed, it's an action. It's a way of life that's passed from one generation to the next. Right? And this stays in our subconscious, and we just act it out without even realizing it. So when I realized that I had 2 choices, right? I could either be part of the problem, maybe I find this guy, maybe I get the better of him, maybe I beat him up instead of the other way around. Maybe I feel good for a day. But then what I realized is that I would just perpetrate and continue the story in his mind of whatever it was, that black people are bad, black people can't be trusted, or whatever story was in his mind. So I took the solution path, which was, well, how can we find a way to unite each other as opposed to divide, unite? So at that age of 12, I had this very strong understanding of what my life purpose was going to be, which was about how do we find ways to bring people together from different ideologies, mentalities, ways of life, ways of being, around common ground. Not the things that divide us, but the things that unite us. So once I realized that, then different events happened in my life that we'll talk about tonight, I'm sure. And in that journey, I found out things like in my family tree, when I met my dad again, 3 people spring to mind: Jamaican Maroons, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Marcus Garvey. All Jamaican Maroons in my family tree, extended, but in my family tree. So these things I learned along the way. So in other words, I felt and realized that things like SpeakuP Monday, things like the topic of tonight about how do we find ways to succeed through prosperity, but through culture, community, relationships. I found that this was part of the modus operandi, which I'd somehow either inherited or found or discovered or rediscovered, and along that life's journey. And the things of great value which have ever been done by me have had that right at the core of it. And that's kind of what tonight's episode is about, especially being here in Indonesia, you know, a land of 700 plus cultures, 500 plus languages, where the motto of the country, of the nation, is Bhinneka Tunggal Ika, unity in diversity.
Thank you, Rob. So, this is what I heard. I heard that people are fighting on the basis of stories that do not belong to them.
Yep.
And that what you want to do is create new stories where there is no fighting.
Okay.
And I heard that you created community on the basis of facing a challenge together. And I'm interested in going into that direction of what you think creates good community and what you think creates bad community. Because there are a lot of people who will say, oh, when you trauma bond, it is never healthy. But what I saw in what you were explaining is that people were trauma bonding and were getting really, really strong together. So what would you have to say about that? And do you think that there is bad community or good community? Do you think that the bad and good is a way to explain things? Or do you see things in a different way?
Beautiful question. I see things probably in a different way. And that's, so on this coaching journey that I've been on for years, that comes into everything which I do. There's it dropped in 3 pillars of purpose, I call it. So these 3 pillars of purpose are about how do you start community. So one is that, you feel that you're being pushed by your purpose. So in this case, it's like I grew up in a kids' home. So I feel the plight of other children which are orphaned or that grow up by the state in that particular way. So the push for me would be, if I use my skills to help orphans. It could be in basketball. It could be in mindset. It could be in relationships, right? It could be in business, right? It could be in networking. So it's a drive that I feel pushed to do it because that's how I grew up. So the other one is to be, pulled by your purpose. So let me just go back one step. So when you're living your best life, so when I had no purpose, sorry, that was it. So pushed by a purpose, no purpose I'm about to explain now. So no purpose is literally, I just want to do what lights me up. So when I wake up in the morning, what makes me happy to do that day that's legal and not against the law, right? But maybe, legal, let's stay there for now. What is it that I love to do that I just get a thrill out of doing, right? So in this phase of my life, having no purpose, I did things like I ended up working with Madonna. I ended up working with the supermodels, Naomi Campbell, being a model in Milan, 1998, Swiss jeans. I had these other just crazy experiences that, again, it was coincidental, if you see it that way, where I was just living in my highest happy state of just kind of like the yes man, Jim Carrey, yes to everything. Yes. It's like, what did I just say yes to? And being scared sometimes, but finding myself in a situation where I meet one person who maybe felt that energy of like enthusiasm and like, let's go. And then that introduced me to another situation. So we got pushed by your purpose, having no purpose. Now being pulled by your purpose is number 3. So pulled by my purpose, I'll give you an example, is here in Bali, beautiful, there's no skyline, right? So when you drive or ride on your bike in, say, Tabanan, right? Going to pro-ed school with my kids, right? So Tabanan, I'm riding and I can see the horizon all around me because there's no buildings, right? And actually rice paddies are all around me. So what I get is just a feeling of just happiness, a feeling of rejuvenation, a feeling of being in my element, a feeling of being at peace, let's say. So in this particular state, ideas drop into my head, as I'm sure they do for you too, right? And these ideas are not necessarily pushed by your purpose. They're not necessarily you having no purpose. It's something which drops in and you know that you can do it. You have the strength to do it, you have the skills to do it, you have the opportunity to do it, and you decide to do it. So one example, the Brouwer Food and Wine Festival was an event which I founded and pushed, being 5,000 people in one day that came through Temora Gallery, right? And it was a community event at the core, wrapped up in a food and wine festival. The idea came when I was around Chamagi, riding around in my bike, and I just had this thought that dropped in, and I knew I wanted to do it. SpeakuP Monday was like that too, right? So when Morten, this Norwegian friend who's a speaker, mentioned, Rob, why don't you do speakers? It just dropped in. And I felt pulled to do it. So to answer your question, is there a good community or a bad community? Look, I don't see it the same way. I like see it as, it's like when you're a boat. If you're moving forwards, you can change course. So communities, I don't believe in murder. There's certain things which my values do not agree with. I wouldn't join these kind of communities, right? But outside of that, communities begin if a community is a collection of people which have been brought together by the same values, by the same purpose, mission, vision, and so on. To me, that's a great opportunity. Now, where it decides to head, to me, is where the challenges lie, right? So by itself, it's not good or bad. It's where you decide to direct that population, that community of people, in which direction, for which outcomes, then determine whether it becomes, duality, good or bad.
Okay, I loved what you said about the fact that you became happy as a result of coincidences. And I very rarely hear that. Yes. And I love what you also said about the true nature of happiness, which is always connected to a sense of purpose. And what I'm hearing about the community is that the community that you need in order to propel you is the community that you create with intention, in alignment with your purpose, which requires a level of consciousness to understand in the first place that community is important. Now, the truth is that we are increasingly living in a world where people are isolating. Men are isolating much more than women, and it creates consequences that are, as you mentioned earlier, deadly. Yes. Now, a lot of the reason why people do not create community, it's because it requires work and it requires commitment, like a relationship. Yes. So, how much work do you put into creating community? But not only about creating community, because you can go on dates and you can create opportunities for dinner, but keeping the community, sustaining the relationship that you have. And is it worth the effort? And maybe we can bridge into the other word that we want to talk about tonight, which is prosperity. And is community essential to prosperity? Or do you think that you can achieve prosperity on your own?
Ooh, you got me thinking about prosperity now. So the first part of it was about, just to remind me, that was about is community hard work and so on and so on. Okay, look, if I said it wasn't hard work, I'll be lying, because it is. Having said that, though, there was a saying once said that if you love what you do, are you working? Right? So that, SpeakuP Monday, for example, with 466 episodes tonight. Has it been hard work? Yeah, it has. But have I felt like it's been hard work? On occasion, yes. But I'll give you an example. The first 50 episodes was all enthusiasm. Right? The next 100 episodes were a mix of enthusiasm and a bit of work, because people would drop out, maybe like tonight, right? And then you have to find something or someone to replace them, right? So that's like work. But then after that, it began to take on a life of its own. So whereas, maybe the guest drops out for that upcoming episode, maybe whereas before I would go like, oh God, who am I got to replace this? Now it's like saying, wow, I wonder who's going to come in. Right? Now, being very honest with you, so tonight I had an idea of an episode, but I didn't crystallize it. That's why I'm here. Right? So it wasn't deliberate I should be here. Right? So, and that's the other thing, realizing that the worst comes to the worst, I can be a guest, right? So just being very honest with you. So the key to community, though, is the values, right? So if you're aligned to the values, it comes through you, not from you. Through you, not from you means that it feels like a calling. That's what the communities that I create, it feels like a calling. It feels like I'm being pulled to actually do it. Not necessarily pushed or do it because I love doing it, but pulled to actually do it. So that's how it feels to me personally. Now, there was an extension of that moving into prosperity. Yeah, so I mean, I guess, how do you define prosperity? And so in this situation, I define prosperity as the quality of the relationships that you have or that are formed as a result of what you do.
So you don't define it as what I get from the community. You define it as the quality of the relationships that you create and that you nurture with the people. That's your prosperity, not how much can I get from these people, how much business can they bring me. That is not the purpose. You're putting your heart into something else, which I imagine does bring you connections and does bring you business opportunities, but you're not seeking that. So you're not seeking to use the community, you're seeking to feed the community and to seed the community and to see where it actually lands. Yeah,
I mean, look, I'm laughing because I am invited to join and been endorsed by people like Founders Institute, Startup Grind, which is the largest accelerator in the world and the largest startup community in the world, Forbes Business Council, and a whole bunch of others. Now, this is why I'm laughing, because when it came to Speak Up Monday, for example, in what you're saying, it wasn't until I think about 80 episodes ago, 60 episodes ago, that I realized that what happens as a result of cultivating relationships is that business opportunities then come. So I didn't start it for that purpose. I started because it was a passion that became an obsession, right? But then literally 400 episodes through, so I'm kind of embarrassed about it in a way, I realized, my God, this thing actually creates business too, right? So I can actually help because there's a confidence in the quality of the relationships that we've now created in these 10 different market sectors. So there's trust. So when they have a challenge or a problem or an issue, maybe they'll come to you and say, hey, Rob, can you help me with this? I need to be connected to this sort of person or this kind of solution. So I'm like, well, yeah, that's episode number 65. Let me give them a call. Yep. And I put them together and solved. So again, in many ways, I think I'm a terrible businessman, right? Because I didn't see that opportunity until much later. But I think that's a major reason of success is because I didn't treat it like that. It wasn't a strategy to obtain business. It was simply a calling that I knew I could fulfill and that I had to do it. Right? So every week we haven't missed one except for Nippy one day where Nippy was on that same day. But we haven't missed. And I refuse to miss because, it's like this, right? So that's ideally answering your question.
Okay, two things now. First of all, we'll go back to the idea of showing up because I think it's very, very important. And I find that less and less people show up. Yeah. But the first thing that I was hearing is that you make a difference between community and networks. Because when you invest in networking, and men are really cool at that, they network, they go golfing, and they make businesses. But their networks are not the people that they are going to go to when they feel lonely and they are about to kill themselves. Community is. So would you have a piece of advice on how you should approach this? And what I heard is that network gives quantity, community gives quality. And why is it that someone should seek quality rather than quantity in a world where everyone is racing for money?
You know, interesting point that you made. I was speaking to a friend of mine, Gil, earlier on. Gil Petersall, great friend, a networking legend, right? So he's probably watching us now, watching what I'm going to say. Gil, I'm looking after you, brother. So what it is like this. So networks and communities, is there a difference? Are they the same? And so on. I think it comes down to a definition. So I think for a lot of people, they think that networking is this kind of mindless, and I did this, by the way, so I'm not dissing it, right? You remember the foolscap folders, like the A4 ones? I had the ones where you got the business inserts, like 8 on a page, and then you double-side it, and you got 16. I had 4 of these. Each one was maybe a couple of 100 pages. So I used to go to events for the purpose of getting a business card only. Right? And I used to just collect these business cards, right? And I think these foolscap folders are still at home in London somewhere if my sister hasn't burnt them or something like that. So here's the thing. So intentional networking as opposed to just general kind of scattergun networking, yeah, I would tend to agree with you. Maybe it doesn't necessarily have a defined purpose, you know, but networks and communities, I think the key point here is the quality of conversations that you have, because a network can become a community, and in a way I guess it is, but in this definition, you know, like from the point of view of support, care, love, openness, support, I think what you're really saying is that, you know, can you have those vulnerable conversations with somebody else that opens them up to seeing, hang on a second, this is unity consciousness here. So you and I are the same. We've made different choices. We have different wrappers, right? Some have got, not wrapper as in a wrapper, but as in the skin color, in case you're wondering, right? We have different ideologies, the ways of seeing the world, and blah, 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 blah. But is there a common ground? Things that we can all come together around, right? Things that we can synchronize on, things that we can talk about without upsetting each other, right? And to the extent to which we can be vulnerable and relatable is maybe the extent to which that network becomes a very powerful community that then supports your growth in good times and bad, if I can say good and bad for this point of view, in good and bad, in sickness and in health. So I think that that's the answer that comes up, yeah.
That's beautiful. To be very practical, for people who struggle to communicate and to create community. You talked about vulnerable conversations. How do you approach someone that you meet for the first time if you want to connect? Are there a couple of tips that you can give to people to actually show that vulnerability, that openness, and take the conversation to a much higher level very quickly, if you are not Ubundian and haven't done a course on authentic relating?
Love the Ubundian quote. So again, look, I believe it's like this. So for me personally, the background that I had being an introverted kid, being the only black kid in a white school for the first 13 years, thinking I was white, not black, coconut, right, was part. Another part in a children's home, which was pejoratively black. I spent most time at school, so that's where I got this relating from my white friends. Failing exams, going back to college to study, retake A-levels, anyone knows what they are, advanced level, mamma mia. Black, 99% black. I had one of the biggest culture shocks of my life, right? But being bullied as a kid, I found humor. Humor was a way for me to nullify, or a way for me to, the guys who are about to beat me up, for making them laugh. Then it's like, this guy's too funny to beat up. Let's beat somebody else up. So these sorts of experiences created this emotional IQ within me to know someone's mood and to feel someone's mood. So now I know in my own heart and soul that I can walk into any room and relate to anyone which is a massive claim. But over the years, I've been in like literally Ku Klux Klan hangouts that you wouldn't believe, right? Because I feel that I can connect on that level. That's a personal thing, and I think we all have our stories that create who we become. That can, if weaponized, I use that word a little bit indiscriminately, but if weaponized, creates an infallible way for us to move forward on our life's purpose. Because we need all of those experiences to be able to arm us, to give us the skills that we need to really define our purpose and to go make it happen. Putting that aside, Gil, I think it's got three practical steps. I'll mix in with a few of mine. Number one, if you're in a room of people, compliment someone without talking about them. In other words, if I see Jennifer over here wearing pink, right, and without me speaking to her, the thoughts that I have in my heart and my soul is like, I find something that I really like or appreciate about her, even though I don't even know her. It might be like, I love her style. Her style is just amazing, right? I'm saying this to myself, so I'm giving compliments to people without actually speaking. So now this you can do, it's non-physical, right? It's non-verbal, but you can do it. And again, our bodies and our field is way out there. So people can feel our energy way before they meet us. All of us can, right? So by giving compliments to people is one way to start to break that down. Number two, these are not in any particular order, it's this understanding that human beings are hardwired in general to be defensive. Right? So that means that when I go into a room, if not trained or not in my nature, the first thing I'm going to do is put up my barrier and kind of think that people are thinking maybe things about me that aren't positive. Maybe I'm going to start to think, you know what I mean, that they don't like me or, so the walls are going to go up. So when I realize, hang on a second, they're just like me, they're scared too. So if I can just reach out to them knowing that I'm scared, knowing that they're scared, let's see what happens. So once you've given this compliment and you reach out with a compliment, hey, I was just admiring your outfit today. It's just beautiful on a day like this, where it's a bit dark. You're like a beam of light, Again, not Obudian. But you can give them a compliment that's genuine from the heart. Right? Yes. Genuine from the heart. None of this, I read it in a book and you say it and you don't mean it because you're going to feel it. And that feels awkward. And then you're back to square one or -1. So number one, give a compliment in your mind. Number two, when you speak to them, first words, compliment. And number three, one of the most powerful things, smile. Right? A smile. Right? Human beings, when we see someone smiling at us, it's like when you go to someone and you say, hi, my name's Rob. And you put your hand out, 9 times out of 10, even if you don't know them, what are they going to do next? Put their hand out too. Because we're hardwired like that. Give, receive. So literally by smiling, right, and just with those three things, I love threes, with those three things, I think it begins to break down this barrier of fear that most people have when it comes to going into a space where you don't know people and where, there's this, you harbor this inner fear that they're going to say something or you're going to be put on the spot and the spotlight with a microphone and lights in your hand or whatever it might be. Right? So these are the three things that will come up.
So what I'm hearing here is that you have to enter the room with the intention of making people feel seen. Yes? Because you're not going to be seen if you do not see others. This is what I heard. So from seeing to showing up, yes, and actually bridging to culture, because I love the story that you shared about, growing up, being black in a white environment, having a culture shock when you were amongst a black community. Yep. And so how did you show up in this different environment? How important is it to show up in community? And also, you showed up, you mentioned the smile and you mentioned the humor. And I get the sense that you showed up as a kind of persona. Yes, but there is a difference between using humor and self-deprecation. Self-deprecation is not always healthy, although you grew up in the UK and self-deprecation is a national hobby. Yes, but it's not necessarily healthy. Right. And a lot of people don't see the difference, and that self-deprecation puts them down all the time. So how did you maneuver these things, knowing that you needed to retain this level of self-confidence and affirmation, whilst you almost, you know, if I were to translate between the lines, had to put on a role that you were forced to get into in order to gain respect. And either you could have become the villain, the guy who was going to beat up everyone and everyone is going to be afraid of me. And I've heard that story on many occasions. Or you become the clown, yes, and you entertain everyone, but you gain safety. Safety is the outcome, yes. Yeah. Where do you find your real self in those roles?
Love it. Great question. Just remember these 3 words for me. Yeah. History, people pleaser, and children's home, right? So one thing I quickly want to say, which I think is really important. So there's a guy called John Meacham. You may know him. He's an author in the US. Now, what I'm about to say, I think is really powerful for a takeaway for people watching this. And this particular one, The Soul of America, is a book. Soul of America. There's 2 things. I love 3s, but there's 2 things which are important in this book. One of them I'm going to talk about, which is, and this is the key that brings all these things together. And that is, I'm a little bit older now. When I was growing up, if you had a difference of opinion with somebody else who was a friend of yours, you could find your way around it, right? If I was of the age where I could drink, we'd probably, let's go and have a drink. We don't agree about this, but let's go and have a drink, right? And we would just find our way through it. These days, I feel that people, if they have a difference of opinion, they cancel each other. Right? It's like, I'm not talking to you ever again, you're an idiot, right? Or this now, you're deleted, I'm blocking you on all social media channels. We are done, right? It's over. So here's a thing which I think is really important for people to find a way to break through this. Yeah? So there's 3 steps to it. So number 1 is curiosity. Right? So it's, my brother Farouk is just here. We met him a few weeks ago. Beautiful guy, amazing guy. But let's say we didn't get along. I would say, firstly, to suspend what I believe I know about him. Put that aside. The next thing I would do is say curiosity. So what has made Farouk believe so strongly in what he believes now, to a point where he's holding on to it like for life or death, right? So I'd ask him questions that give me that insight, and I listen, right? Listen to interrupt? No. Listen pretending to listen while you're doing other things? No. Listen, active listening. I'm listening to what he's saying and what he's not saying, right? So I ask him, and I find out, right. So with curiosity, I realized that he had X, Y, and Z upbringing, which led him to believe and feel that this is who he has to be in the world now. That's interesting. Curiosity. The next one then is humility, which is saying, well, if I understand where he's from and why he is the way that he is, I have to understand that if I was in the same position with the same people, factors, environment, opinions around me, I would probably be the same, if not deeper, down the rabbit hole as I find him to be now. So the first one, again, is curiosity. The second one is humility. The third one now is empathy. So now if I understand that, hey, I know why he is the way he is, curiosity, I understand that if I had the same upbringing, I'll be the same person. And then number 3 is like, right, so then I have empathy for him. It's not that I suddenly believe what he's saying to be true. I didn't say that. But at least I can get to the point where I can say, you know what? In his belief system, he has a point. Now, if I can get to that place, other conversations can build from there because I found common ground. So those 3 steps are really practical steps that anyone can use if you're dealing with a parent, a friend, a sibling, right? Someone in your community, because part of the community and uniting community is how do you add harmony, meaning how do you bring people together who appear to have diametrically opposed viewpoints on something, when you know in your heart they're both good people. They're both beautiful souls. Why is it that they do this? Because they're stuck in ego. Okay, fine. So how do we, and I've done this in many times. So one community, which is a blockchain community here, being very practical now, 10 blockchain projects in this particular community, a mix of foreigners and a mix of Indonesians. The foreigners were kind of beating their chest, I know, in ego. The West, I or me. Then the East, respect, we. West, all about me. East, about we. Different viewpoints. So the Western guys, when I took SpeakuP Monday and interviewed everybody time and time again, they really got to see, hang on a second, this Indonesian fellow, he thinks the way that I think. Right? When he's under pressure, he performs the way that I perform. And when he has doubts or doesn't feel like it's going to work, he behaves, goes into his cave like the man does, right, to work out. He behaves just like I do. So after a while, 3 things happen. They see each other. They meet each other, meaning they have a discussion, because now they're inspired to talk about the things they've just seen. Then the third part is that now they work together. So in this group of 10, 4 of them are now traveling around Indonesia, supported by government at the highest level as very successful projects. I've repeated this 10 times in communities which I've developed, and it's the same playbook every single time. So just a few practical ones there for anyone who needs that. So now you've got 3 words to remember.
You had history, people pleaser, and children's home.
Beautiful. So the question on, like, how is it that you can be relatable without sacrificing and this self-deprecating humor, being a people pleaser, and how is it that you don't go so far as you become a bully, physical, mental, emotional, or otherwise? Okay, I did all of those things, right? So at school, before the age of 12, I was a bully, right? Little kids would come to me and say, that guy's beating me up. And I would go over there and hit the guy and he would go down, right? And I'll be, Now, later on, what that became was me just picking on people which had done nothing. I just wanted to practice a new move that I saw in a Bruce Lee movie, right? So I did this. One time, I picked on a guy who didn't go down when I hit him. Then I woke up on the way to hospital. So what did I learn from that? I learned that if I have a strength, I need to hide it. Now that had circumstances later on that didn't work in my favor, but in that moment, that's what I did, right? So I went to that extreme. So then coming to the second part of that, then I became, or continued to be, more of a people pleaser, where I did sacrifice my self-esteem, dignity, pride. I sacrificed all of it to avoid getting beaten up. I sacrificed all of it to avoid standing up. I sacrificed all of it to not be seen, right? Because I didn't want to be seen. Introvert, extrovert came later, but I didn't want to be seen, right? And then, so then how did I ended up coming to a place where, I can now, in community, I use all of these things. I know that instinctively and intuitively, some people, I need to raise their energy, right? Because they're there by themselves, feeling self. And I'm an introvert and an extrovert, an ambivert. I am both. And I'm happy to be, because I can feel and see both. The introvert is more powerful, by the way. That's another story for another day. So the introvert can see people.
I beg to disagree.
Good, good. Introvert, I can see people. I can see where they are. I can connect with them. I can connect without sacrificing, but without ego as well. Right? Without too much ego. There's always a little bit of ego in there, but without much ego. So that's what the introvert does. And the extrovert is great because it can move the energy around the room. And sometimes people need some sunshine, man. Right? All these deep talks all the time. It's deep. It's deep. The gold is deep. The oil is deep. We go deep. Yes. But sometimes you need a bit of lightness, right? Just to, let that one be embodied either now or at a later time. So this is how both are used. And I would say that now, have I become a master of it? No. But I believe in mastery, which means that I'm on a quest, if you want to call it that, to improve. Now that may be, like snakes and ladders, boom, oh no, and then a ladder, right? So I've done both. I've been all of those three, and there are times where even now I'm too much in one or too much in the other, but in general, I self-regulate enough to be able to fulfill what I'm there to do. Yeah.
Yeah, you're becoming a wiser version of what you wanted to be when you thought that hitting people would make you into Bruce Lee. So you're getting to the more adult version of being Bruce Lee.
But the downside of that is that for so many years, we're talking up to recently, I held myself down too much. So and you look at again Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, they all got shot. Dead. So again, you can go back into the subconscious, wherever you want to go. But the point is that I held myself down too much, actually, looking back. Just to be honest, right? Too much. And that inhibited my growth on one perspective, but then on the other, reflecting on it now, it gives me that checkpoint to maybe, if I'm heading in that direction, to check myself.
I think it's very courageous of you, to share that, to go on that journey, but also courageous to look at the world in with a different narrative and in a different way, because people would say, and we're going to one of the words that that we need to talk about.
By the way, if you have questions, we forgot. Do it. Questions about 5 minutes or so.
And I have zero idea what time it is, by the way, because I'm having a really good time. You can tell me what time it is? Can we do a check? 7:15. Brilliant. So yes, please think of questions and courageous in the way that you find things in a different way. People who just want no, which is 90% of men who are looking for a relationship on Tinder and are in their profile saying no drama. What do you say to that? Because community is full of drama. Life is full of drama. So, how do you overcome this thing of wanting to not have any drama, have a peaceful life, and no one challenging you ever?
Great question. There's three things, three. One is my daughter, the older one, the younger one, 8 years of age, very hard-headed, a bit like a mum. Sorry, but she's beautiful too. All right, hard-headed. Reconciliation. For those who maybe don't remember, reconciliation. Thank you for telling him. Reconciliation was about this whole South African apartheid system that did so much damage to so many people, that kept that damage going. Let's get some of the stakeholders of this craziness into a courtroom situation, reconciliation, where they could come clean with what they did, but without any imprisonment or punishment, right? Reconciliation, check it out. Now, that was an incredibly difficult time because, you had people who, it looks like I'm going to have to reboot this phone. Is that right, Guzman? Yeah. Sorry guys, but this phone just went dead. 1919. Okay, 1 second, everyone.
You can Google spiritual meaning of 1919.
Okay, there you go, Guzman. Right, cool. So remember, if you're getting cut off, sorry, you're on YouTube, might be better. So reconciliation. It's so difficult to do because if you don't allow the anger, like you can't necessarily go from anger into love. Right? There's different stages: anger, regret, reflection, blah 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 blah, love. Right? You can go through it faster, But can you really go from anger to love? I don't know how many people can do that. I'm not one of them yet, right? I can go through it pretty quick based upon what it is and what's triggered me. So with harmony and community, harmony isn't kumbaya to me. It's not like, let's all just live in love, Part of me wants that. But for me, and probably this is my own collective wound and subconscious mind coming in, but for me, it's about harmony can be, with some people, can go straight to harmony through love, right? Who are on that level, on that frequency. It's love, we go straight to harmony. But others may not be on that same level, and different level, different devil. But at the end of the day, they may need to go through their own awakening period to reach that point of harmony within themselves. So harmony, from the purpose of this conversation, I think quite a lot of the time is done through struggle, is done through hardship, is done through eating shit, pardon the French, right? And then through this process, a bit like snakes and ladders, through this process you arrive in harmony. So in a community, does it mean that everyone will always get along? That everyone's always going to be happy with each other? No. There's going to be infighting, there's going to be ego. These things will happen from time to time, right? But what is your ability to hold that space for these two people without taking a side? Again, that process before, John Meacham, curiosity, humility, empathy. So these are the sorts of things that can get you there, in the same way that reconciliation got many people, not all people, but also got many people there. There were some who still needed to vent that complete disharmony and dis-ease in a physical way. Do I condone physical violence? Not necessarily, but I do understand that for some people, they need to find a healthy physical way to get that out. Right? And for some it might be boxing, for some it might be training, I don't know. It is what it is. But if you can find a way to healthily, and that's, as a kid, that's what happened to me, by the way. Rugby, football, I was angry at this particular point in my life, being in the children's home and blah, 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 blah. So I used to hit people in tackles with my head, right? In rugby, it's with the shoulder. Right? Shoulder, legs, ankles, I went in with my head. I was so angry, right? And there were people that would stay down and their leg would be dead, and I'd be like, ha, 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 right? Me, I'd be kind of hallucinating on like a blue guy running across the world. But the guy was on the floor writhing in agony. I had won. Is that healthy? I don't know if that's healthy, but that's what I did to help evacuate some of these feelings that were physically in me. Yeah.
You remind me of a sentence that I learned that really touched me, which is that people are more concerned with being right than with being in love. And for me, that, this is the concept of harmony. You don't have to be right. You just have to be in discussion. And that's it. It's not about being right. It's about being curious about how the other people sees life, so that you can understand their perspective. And there is no point in being right or in being of this concept of right and wrong. It is about an exploration of the other person and what they value and their stories.
One quick thing, and John, we're going to have a chat after. Thanks for coming, mate. One of these things that I meant to mention earlier on is history as well. So we all have a history. We all have something from somewhere else in a way, and so there's no other way which I can really. I don't know how to explain it, but there have been times, and I think maybe we all have our own way of looking at this. But there are times where it's like that voice in the head: go left. And if you would have gone right, something terrible would have happened. This sort of thing, without getting too fatalistic on you, but in many ways it's happened to me many, many times. Okay? And it's like, so this history, this historiological, if that's a word, where you're from, where your DNA comes from, right? Where your ancestry comes from. I've seen enough and felt enough to realize that that's also part of this as well. There are times where I've been very down the rabbit hole, right? Where I didn't appreciate. Remember when I said I was a black kid, the only black kid at school? I thought my nose was too big, my lips are too big, my head too pointed, all this stuff. I was in a mirror like this up to my face, saying, I'm going to change this, I'm going to change that, I'm going to nose job, lip job, jobs everywhere, right? And I'll be down, I'll be spiraling. And there's things that came and supported me and helped me, which I have no recollection of learning I learned this in history, or I learned that in math. It's something else that came from somewhere else. And so, again, when I look at that history and that who are you in your core, I've got friends who their ancestry is American Indian, right? And you see it in them. Right, there are times where you just feel like this, and even with all the hardship and trouble that I've been in, will be in, am in, whatever, there's part of me that will never be touched. And I know it. There's some part within here which is like, it's not like under a lock and key, but it's something that's so old, that's so powerful, right? That in some ways it scares me to let it out, let's be honest, right? But it's in there, and no matter what happens to me, it's like this one place no one can get to. So again, and I think and I feel that this is related to a lot of people sitting here, where when you look back over your life and the terrible situations that you've maybe found yourself in, where you didn't think you would make it, either physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, but you did. When you look back in those moments, what is it that brought you through it? It might be a religion, or I'm not here to judge, I'm not here to say anything. But what I'm saying is that there's something greater, which is part of us, that is also there driving us. And in the moments, in those defining moments, when it's almost like we're completely up against the wall, there's something else that rears its head that says, you've got this, move that way, go this way, duck, jump, right? Move forwards, or whatever it is. So just wanted to share that one.
Yeah, ancestral guidance. And I'm hearing you talk about something that women speak about all the time, but men have difficulties pronouncing, which is the word intuition. Yeah. Yes. So now has come the time for questions. Yes. So gather yourself together, think about something really exciting to say, and just think about, and we will wrap up to end tonight's show with this. What is it that we've missed that you would like to say?
Okay.
Yes, not now. Yeah. Yes. So who has a question? Yes, please.
Hello. So first of all, okay, it's clear, right? You can hear it well?
Yes.
Yeah, we can.
Okay. So first of all, I loved everything. It was wonderful. While I was listening to you, I realized you know yourself a lot. You're very aware of yourself and your traumas and what you've gone through. And I feel like that's really important, but not a lot of men or women have that sometimes, especially sometimes with the chaos of the world, like overwhelming of work, overwhelming with relationships or life or personal stuff, or like traumas that you don't know how to deal with. How would you advise any person, a boy, a girl, to learn to understand themselves more, to be more aware of themselves? Because I can tell that you being more aware of yourself brought you here today. I love how you can really express, and you knew your triggers, you know where it came from. How can you make someone learn to understand that too for them?
Beautiful question. And what I would start off by saying is that, and I know you didn't mean this, what I found for me personally is that you can't make anyone do anything, right? You can lead them, right? And that's not saying, hey, I'm going to lead you over here. No, it's by taking a stand yourself. And those who see you, hear you, they realize that you're doing something that's difficult, and that they're inspired by you doing it. So it's not me saying, I will make you do this, or another way of saying it that's still controlling and manipulative, say, I'm going to lead you. Just watch what I do, right? So that's one thing that comes up. But again, great question. Number two is that I think it's different for everyone. For me, what it was, this is one of the trigger points. There were 3 relationships that I was in that happened. They were around about a year each, roughly. And what it was they ended the same way. And I had this thing called attachment disorder, which is still part of me, but I'm aware of it now. Cut a long story short, 3 different women, the relationships ended the same way. On the 3rd one, I had an epiphany, realizing that the only common denominator in this whole situation was me. And it was a horrible, incredible, beautiful, nasty moment. Because then I realized, oh shit, I'm the one at cause. So I think for a lot of people, they go through their own journey and maybe come to the similar realization that they are at the core of what has happened, whatever that is. So number 3, to get them there, when I coach people, I talk about patterns. So what kind of pattern have you noticed that's repeating in your life? If you don't know what it is, I'll just ask you about your past and what's happened, relationships, relationship with money, all these different things. Now, I have them too, by the way. I don't get out of this alive either. I have my patterns too that maybe I'm not aware of. So it's not to say that I'm perfect, because I'm not, but I'm mastery, the belief and the following and understanding that I'll just improve over time. Sometimes I'll be like this though, right? So that's probably the most important thing, is for people to come to their own realization. If you really want to provoke it, then it's a case of saying, look, have you noticed, and volunteering you first, vulnerably, I just noticed the other day that I do this, and this, and I realize that I want to change it. Because the results that I'm getting aren't results that I'm proud of, aren't results that I want to keep on going with. Another definition on that, there's a course called Landmark Forum, which I did. Maybe some people here have done it before. Landmark Forum was an incredibly powerful self-development, if you want to call it that, course, a conversation over 2.5 or 3.5 days. And part of that is that it's an understanding that we all have these things that we do to avoid feeling pain. And then when you start having these conversations of how am I avoiding feeling pain, and we add that to it, then we start to get these answers that come back, right? Then you start to realize that I do this thing repeatedly, but the reason why I do it is because there's a payoff in me doing it. So if I'm always putting myself down, physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, whatever it is, my payoff might be everybody feels sorry for me, and I get stuff. Oh, you poor guy, here, have a house. Oh, you poor guy, here, let me buy you a coffee. Oh, you poor guy, here, let me buy you a new car. Well, whatever it is, there's a payoff. So when you're beginning to unravel these things, sometimes a good way to ask yourself is that, what, there's this pattern that I'm repeating, which my conscious mind is saying is not a good thing, but I keep doing it. What is the payoff that I'm receiving by doing this thing repeatedly? And just sit with that, and things will always come back. The universe, when you ask it, will bring you back answers. You may not like what you see. More often than not, you probably won't like what you see, but this is truth. This is what's happening.
I love what you said about over time. Yes, being French, I'll make a comparison to a bottle of wine. There are wines that you have to drink at a young age, and there are wines that you cannot drink unless you wait 10 or 15 years. And the thing is, sometimes you need age and you need years to come to that resolution and to come to the learning. Things take time. This instant gratification of instant healing is not realistic. Yes, so you can start the journey and be aware, but it's the acceptance that you will not be the finished product at 25 years old. You are not, and we are older, and we're still on the path of discovering things about us that we are like, oh my God, how the hell did I not see this before? Yeah. Do we have another question? Someone else? One more?
All good.
All good. So,
I remember the last question.
you remember the last question. What is it that we missed?
Yeah. So look, firstly, I just want to thank everybody, either if you're watching on Instagram Live, YouTube Live, or Facebook Live. Those in the audience who came, really appreciate you being here on this rainy, we're having like cyclonic conditions here in Bali, which is a bit crazy this time of year, but it is what it is. So really would appreciate you spending your time here. And, you know, it's my hope, no, not hope, it's my wish that there's something, again, inspiration is caught, not necessarily taught. So there may be something in what was said that triggered you or triggered a memory, or you remember, oh, hang on a second, remember what that thing is, and maybe let that sit with you, right? Because that's probably the reason why you came. Same with everyone here at home. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that, you know, I said before that I started SpeakuP Monday, and it was nothing to do with business. It was all just me giving. I guess now I should explain a little bit about what I do, because for some people, this is partly what prompted this episode as well, was that the people were saying, well, what is it that you do outside of SpeakuP Monday? Right, so I'll give you a couple of minutes just to explain what that is. So my wife, my partner in life and business is Marina, and basically we created a PTMA here in Indonesia, and looks like we're having problems with the phone tonight. Mamma mia. Well, but you know what? It's 3 times we've done this. This is fine. Three is a good number. Remember. Hold on 1 second. I should tell everybody on camera what the. Yeah, there you go, brother. All right. So take 3 on the Instagram Live. Instagram Live. I apologize. Okay. So we created. It's a gateway to Indonesia with 3 award-winning initiatives as an umbrella. One is SpeakuP Monday that you're watching now, that you're here, you're part of it, which is, this incredible conversation that happens with leaders in about 10 different market sectors, underpinned by people inspire people, unity and diversity, entrepreneurship and social impact. Number 2 is RIB and Associates, which is like a growth strategist and gateway to Indonesia in 10 different market sectors. And what we do is that we help companies, people come to Indonesia, and as well as companies, people grow within Indonesia in these 10 different market sectors, right? So within that are things like immersive feasibility, where we basically take you to your market, and again, we have a great network of relationships, and you get to find out if your product service will really work in this market. Another one is business matching, which a bit like Nokia. So people sometimes call me Nokia, connecting people and projects. So I love doing that. That's probably what we get the most of, is about how do we connect people, connect solutions, connect communities, create communities. This is all this RIB and Associates in these 10 market sectors for businesses, which are medium to large, and individuals the same. Then the final part is tourism architect, which is kind of where it started in a way, which is how do we do this with tourism boards and to create very curated inbound tourism initiatives. So we work with, there's a UNESCO World Heritage site here, which just won Best Tourism Village in the world as well, which is Jatilui. And for example, then we have 3 aspects of this MOU that we're working on. Number 1 is how do we bring smart farming solutions into Jatilui, because the average age of a farmer is 59, 60, and the next generation doesn't really want to be a farmer. So how do you bring in these new initiatives or new ways of farming that not only create a monetary value greater than a hospitality job, where people are being lost to in some ways, but also creates this demand, this this what's the right term? This like a burning sensation in the stomach, desire. Thank you, Carol. This desire in the stomach for the next generation to want to be farmers, right? So food security going forward is one of the most important things in the world, right? So that's one. The other aspect is how do we increase the tourism assets in the area? People right now go to Jatalui on a bus, get off, take a photo, have some food, and leave. How is it we can create them to stay longer? Is it by creating, walking tours, jogging tours, agro-tourism initiatives where you blend agriculture and tourism together, learning about the land, how it operates, incredible stuff, right? And then the third one is how do we attract businesses with heart to the area? What is a business with heart is like this. One of the beautiful things that I love about living in Indonesia is, again, I mentioned it before, 700 plus cultures, 500 plus languages. The principles are phenomenal. One in Bali is Tri Hita Karana, which again, 3 roads to prosperity. The way that I explain it to foreigners is like, look, if you have a business, an initiative, then you ask yourself the following questions. So what is the impact of my business, initiative, or program on top of the triangle? Human to God, culture, customs, traditions, religion. Okay, maybe give myself a score out of 10. Sliding down over here, what's the impact of my project, initiative, business on human to the environment or human to nature? Regenerative systems, policies, and practices. How does it stand there? And the final part is human to human prosperity. So how is prosperity, in this case, prosperity which is financial and non-financial, how is that distributed through the ecosystem in a way that it regenerates? Because business, you also need to make money, yeah? And otherwise, it's very difficult to keep that wheel turning. So how do we attract businesses which follow this principle to the area, the outlying areas, not the farm, not the rice paddy, that will remain unchanged. So that's tourism architect, and we work with, we've been endorsed by the Ministry of Tourism and Creative Economy of Indonesia, also the Bali tourism stakeholders. As I mentioned before, there's Forbes Business Council, there's Founder Institute, there's also Startup Grind. We're voted a #1 change maker in Bali. That's the Nuanu Social Fund and a bunch of different initiatives. But very simple, what's behind it is a desire which is being pulled, right? I mentioned before, is a desire to connect people and projects together that create powerful communities and positive impacts for as many people as possible. Right? That's what's at the core of it. And the final thing which I'll say is that, so I've gone from, coaching individuals, coaching teams, coaching businesses. Now, for me, it's about coaching nations. Right? So those 3 things there, right? About, again, John Meacham's talking about it. How do we generate curiosity? How do we generate, humility? And how do we generate empathy? These are the critical pieces of how you create a community, of how you create a prosperous, thriving ecosystem and relationships that bring back so much more value than the sum of its parts. Yeah.
Robert, thank you very much. One last question. Like, the amount of things that you've just described is humongous. That's why I couldn't remember them. And in consideration of all the things that you have achieved, that speak of the man who you are, how would you like to be remembered? Because when we create community, we create a legacy. So when you're dead, what are the 3 words that you want people to remember?
Wow. Connector. Inspirator. Respect.
Respectful or respected?
Respectful.
Respectful. Thank you very much. This was an honor. Thank you very much, Tropical Nomad. Woo, woo, woo! And thank you very much to everyone who's been watching live and who is here, present, that we're about to connect with, have a picture with, and hug. I might even do a few little kisses on cheeks, to be very French. Thank you very much, Robert.
And a round of applause for Carol, please, everybody. Thanks for stepping in. Thank you so much, sister. See you next week.